Committee will come to order. First, let me welcome our newest member, Senator Alex Padilla from California. It's so good to have him, and so everyone knows the changes that were made. Senator Kelly was a tremendous asset for this committee, but he had an opportunity, and I think it was a wise move from his standpoint to be able to go on to Intel with all his background, his training, and everything of that sort. So we lost one and gained one, so I think it's about a pretty good swap. I think it was a pretty good swap. Anyway, but we're good. You know, Senator Padilla represents the largest number of Americans, the second largest consumption of energy from his state. And I know he'll dive right in so many important issues, including hydrogen, forestry, wilderness, Western water, and other issues of importance to California that our late, great Senator Feinstein worked on diligently, and we got an awful lot of input from her on this committee, but also from all of you, and we appreciate that so much. So with that, we'll get started. I also want to briefly express at the outset my strong concerns about the news last night that our administration has lifted most sanctions on Venezuelan oil for the next 6 months. On the heels of announcing the smallest 5-year offshore oil and gas leasing plan in decades for the United States, administration's turning to Venezuela, and they know I have a problem. I'm sure maybe you all have all different feelings on this. They're one of the world's dirtiest energy producers and an oppressor of its own people. And to help make up the production, that we are not doing what we can do more for ourselves. I understand that the administration believes that it will encourage Venezuela to make democratic reforms, but that's been tried, and we failed before. It makes no sense at all to reward bad actors before they actually take the action you want. We tried that with Iran, and now here we are with Venezuela. But now turning to today's topic. When I look back to when I became ranking member of the committee in 2019, we had not done a comprehensive update to our nation's energy policy in over 10 years. Since then, we've worked hard to address that gap. First, we set our energy policy goals in the Bipartisan Energy Act of 2020. Then we provided the investment needed to make those policies a reality in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. These bills will transform our nation's energy landscape for years to come. I'm extremely proud of these pieces of legislation and the opportunities within them that will make us more energy secure while creating good jobs across our nation. For instance, I was pleased to join a bipartisan group of federal and state lawmakers and business and community leaders to welcome Secretary Granholm and Undersecretary Crane to West Virginia this week, Monday, to announce that the Appalachian Regional Clean Hydrogen Hub won a $925 million award to bring a hydrogen hub to West Virginia and parts of Ohio and Pennsylvania, which is the 3-state region. This funding, which came from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, will ensure West Virginia will be able to be a new epicenter of hydrogen in the United States of America. It's just one example. In the past 2 years, our state has celebrated announcements for battery manufacturing plants, carbon capture projects, microgrid-powered industrial sites, with many more projects on the way that stand to benefit from the DOE support. I will mention that tomorrow I go for a groundbreaking for Nucor Steel. Nucor Steel has just signed a contract with Helion, which is a fusion manufacturer. And they're intending by 2028 to have a Helion fusion manufacturing plant for clean hydrogen to make clean steel be the cleanest in the world, being made in West Virginia. We're extremely proud of that, and that opportunity is unbelievable. In the case of our hydrogen hub, the private sector is proposing to invest up to $6 billion on top of the nearly $1 billion from the DOE. So if you look at the $1 billion we have, that's a 13% investment the United States is making for a $87 billion return, 87% return, if you will. That's a tremendous thing for us to incentivize in that and basically be willing to share some of that risk that makes these projects possible. The story is also similar across our country. The private sector announcements pouring in as a result of opportunities created by our laws, and all of us should be proud of that. While I'm thrilled to see all these impactful investments being made, it's also disheartening to witness this administration distort the intended purpose of the laws to fulfill the agenda. And they know, I think we've had these conversations, that sometimes we're ahead of our skis and we just want to keep them in check. The laws were deliberately crafted to secure energy supply chains, but so far we've seen too many indications that this administration is willing to sacrifice security to pursue their unrealistic anti-fossil goals. The most apparent example of this is through the implementation of the IRA's EV tax credit. That credit was designed to encourage automakers to onshore their supply chains in order to break our reliance on China, who has dominated the EV supply chain. Unfortunately, actions by this administration to cut the sourcing requirements in half and water them down in other ways just to get more EVs on the roads, Chinese or otherwise, clearly are not a reflection of the text or intent of the IRA and infrastructure law. Not only is the administration violating and manipulating the law to implement the legislation they wanted rather than the bills that we passed, but the decisions they are making will have detrimental impacts on American workers and embolden our adversaries. There is a bipartisan agreement that these laws must be implemented as written as Congress intended to secure our own country's energy supply. This is why our committee expressed bipartisan concern at a hearing earlier this year when DOE was considering providing a grant to Microvast, a battery company with alleged links to the Chinese government. While DOE ultimately made the correct decision not to award this grant, and I thank you for that, this administration's actions as a whole have made me question what aspects of the laws are at risk of being manipulated. So I felt it was important to invite Department of Energy here today, and Mr. Crane, we're so glad to have you, and thank you for coming, to discuss your approach. And Mr. Shaw, you also we're looking and anxious to hear from you of these new important laws, and especially the review of the Department's due diligence process for companies and technologies pursuing grant funding or loan guarantees. I have two primary questions for our witnesses. First, how are we ensuring that U.S. taxpayer dollars are absolutely not benefiting any of our adversaries? And I think we even have named our adversaries that we're very much concerned about, whether it be China or Russia, North Korea, Iran. And second, how is the department ensuring that companies receiving awards have proven technologies worthy of government support to commercialize them? The IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure law are an investment in American energy security, protect ourselves and our allies while breaking our reliance on countries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and other nations who do not share our values and should not be relied upon to provide critical elements of our supply chains. While I was pleased to see the DOE rescinded the Microvast award, I am alarmed that the company was able to get through even the first round of vetting. We continue to hear about our company seeking to use taxpayer dollars to make a devil's bargain with Chinese technology providers, like Ford's potential licensing deal with cattle, seeking to qualify for IRA credits or the conditional loan approved by DOE for core power that involves purchasing technology from a Chinese firm. Let me be clear, I do not want, and I do not believe any of our committee members wants a cent of the funding benefiting China in any way and being held hostage. So I hope today's witnesses will shed some light on the vetting process to make sure China and Chinese companies are not turning taxpayer-funded American innovation into a windfall for our geopolitical adversaries. Between the IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Department of Energy received nearly $100 billion to support new or existing energy advanced technologies, grid modernization, and clean manufacturing programs. Both bills emphasized an all-of-the-above approach so that we can innovate, not eliminate, our way towards a cleaner environment, while at the same time increasing our energy security and creating new economic opportunities here in the U.S. These bills were designed to be balanced and ensure that the best technologies of all types win, not just those favored by any given administration. Historically, DOE's loan program office has fallen short of a balanced approach. If you look at the chart here, it shows you that basically where we're investing our dollars. And 41% went to electric vehicles and clean transportation. Solar was 22%, nuclear was 22%, distributed energy storage transmission was only 7%, wind was only 3%, fossil hydrogen geothermal is 4%. Now, if you look at where our energy comes from today, 81% comes from energy production and fossil fuels and cleaner innovation. 81% with a 4% investment. 8% is nuclear power. Nuclear, 22% investment, 8% right now. And renewables. You can look at all the renewables. 13% is where we get our energy from. So we have a long way to go, but we have to be realistic enough to know where our power is coming today, that we don't short-sight it and get ourselves, get the cart in front of the horse and say, go ahead and start pushing. It doesn't work that way. To correct this, the IRA created the new 1706 Loan Guarantee Program specifically to support investments in our dispatchable fossil fuel plants, such as adding CCUS or other environmental controls. I'm also pleased to see that the LPO is supporting a number of hydrogen projects, a proven technology that we just have not focused on commercializing until the past few years. It's my hope the Department will adhere to a balanced approach moving forward, and I look forward to hearing how DOE is taking that balance into consideration as they work through the decision-making process for these important funding opportunities. I'd also like to hear the Department's plans to ensure that taxpayer dollars are being spent efficiently, effectively, and responsibly. Without a doubt, the Department's energy loan programs have had successes over the years, and it's notable that the interest on loans returned to taxpayers has exceeded losses in investments by roughly 4 times, 4x over. That's excellent. That being said, it's no secret that problematic projects from previous years are still very much on our minds. Mr. Shaw, I hope you are able to assuage any concerns this morning about the efficacies of the loan programs and demonstration how the Department is working to prevent the next Solyndra. Being responsible with all this funding also means DOE's offices should not be working in a vacuum. There needs to be a cohesive strategy to ensure that we are not duplicating efforts and missing key gaps. So I hope that we can hear from Mr. Crane this morning about how he works with Mr. Shaw and other offices within the DOE and across the agencies to make sure that funding is being used in the most effective and efficient ways possible. If implemented effectively, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act have the power to truly transform our country for the better. And that is why it is so important that we get this right. I will provide all the support I possibly can to DOE to help the agency get it right and achieve Congress's intent. But at the same time, it will be of no surprise to hear that I fully intend to continue our committee's robust oversight of the department, which is our jurisdiction and responsibility. And with that, I'm going to turn to my ranking member, Senator Brasso, for his opening remarks.
Well, thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. I want to join you in welcoming Senator Padilla to the committee. Given his degree in engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, we welcome both your participation and your expertise. So welcome to the committee. I look forward to working with you. Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this hearing today. Recent horrifying events provide a disturbing backdrop for today's hearing. Hamas terrorists have viciously attacked Israel. Hamas committed atrocities against innocent civilians, including infants, children. People are sickened by what has occurred, and there is a reason to believe that Iran helped plan and finance this evil attack on our ally. The risk of a wider regional war in the Middle East continues to grow. Meanwhile, Russia continues to wage its unprovoked war against Ukraine, and as you might have seen, Putin and Xi are together today. And China is at the same time growing more aggressive by the day as it pursues global domination. These are consequences of weakness by our nation. They demonstrate that our energy policy needs to be about more than a blind allegiance to tackling climate change. That's what makes the laughably named Inflation Reduction Act so dangerous. Let's be clear. President Biden's energy transition obsession is going to move us from energy independence to energy and mineral dependence on China and Russia and OPEC. It's not the kind of transition Americans want or need. Today, I issued a report exposing how the inflationary IRA will actually make America weaker and our adversaries stronger. Starting with its name, everything we've heard from Democrats about this disastrous bill is a lie. This partisan bill, truly one-side bill, is going to send America and our nation further in the red while enriching red China. It's going to leave taxpayers on the hook for hundreds of billions of dollars in new borrowing. And with a debt of $33 trillion, which is growing, we cannot afford that. President Biden has a terrible track record of protecting taxpayer money. As Vice President, he personally announced the award of a loan guarantee to politically connected solar company, Solyndra, and Mr. Chairman, you made mention of that company in your opening remarks. We all know how it turned out, $500 million bankruptcy with taxpayers footing the bill. With the IRA, the American people can expect to see more Solyndras. The recent revelation that the Department of Energy selected Chinese-connected companies, which you referenced, Mr. Chairman, for financial awards should alarm every American. Shouldn't surprise us. The White House said it welcomes Chinese companies as big players in renewables and electric vehicle markets. The administration has said it's perfectly happy to work with China on electric vehicles. And the IRA encourages more of this. It's a terrible mistake. Republicans and Democrats should be able to agree that taxpayer dollars shouldn't be used to strengthen China. It's not just foolish awards that benefit China. This ill-conceived bill is going to push the United States away from the fuels and the technologies that we dominate toward those that China's and others control. And as your poster and map showed, Mr. Chairman, it points these things perfectly. Chinese companies have led wind turbine, solar panel, and battery production for many years. That's not changing. Now China is the world's largest manufacturer of electric vehicles. China also controls the supply chains of many of the critical minerals that these technologies use. So while the Biden administration has been selecting Chinese companies for grant awards, it's been working to block mining in the United States. Even if we could do more mining here in America, we'd still need huge amounts of critical minerals from China, Russia, and elsewhere to make up for the number of electric vehicles that Joe Biden is demanding. It's not possible to do it otherwise. Contrast this future dependence with America's recent global leadership in oil, natural gas, and coal production. And President Biden and congressional Democrats seem happy to surrender America's energy advantage. And Mr. Chairman, you mentioned in your opening comments what we see happening now in Venezuela with allowing drilling there that we're not allowing in the United States, and we do it much more safely and more respect for the environment than they ever will. So let's be clear about what this means. It means more pleading with dictators like Russia and Iran and Venezuela, as the administration just did yesterday. It means U.S. businesses and workers being held hostage to the whims of our enemies. It means stronger adversaries, weaker allies. Look, we do not need a pro-Iran and pro-China energy policy. That's what we're getting out of this administration. We need to return to a pro-America, all-of-the-above energy strategy that's good for America and for the free world. The stakes are too high, Mr. Chairman. The IRA is, to me, should stand for irresponsible, reckless, and alarming. Can't be salvaged, needs to be repealed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Barrasso. And the great thing about our democracy is we can be friends and agree to disagree. And I will say in response, with the IRA, a lot of implementation, you know that I have a concern about how it's being implemented. But we got to be clear about the facts. We're producing more energy in the country today than ever in the history of our United States of America. 4.6 billion barrels of oil is being produced as we speak. 37 trillion cubic feet of gas. We're 13.5 billion cubic feet of LNG a day. That's going to go to 25. We've increased our wind and solar production. We've doubled it in 1 year. It's an all-in policy that's working. Now, the differences we have is sometimes some administrations, they want to do a little bit more than what the bill basically was intended. But the balance we have right now, it has done that job. And I will say with my dear friends on my Republican side, my Republican friends, a lot of that thought that went into that bill was things that we discussed for 4 or 5 years because we need more energy. We need an all-in policy. What we're afraid of, though, is we might need a little bit longer until we have the new technologies that can replace the dispatchable fuels that people want to replace. And we're not going to take something away until we can do it with as good, if not better. And that's where we are. So with that being said, I want to turn to our witnesses today. We have the Honorable David Crane, the Undersecretary for Infrastructure, Department of Energy, and we're glad to have him. We have Mr. Jigger Shaw, Director of the Loan Programs Office, Department of Energy, and glad to have him here. And we have Honorable Terry Donaldson, Inspector General, Department of Energy. So with that, we're going to go to our witnesses' remarks, and we're going to start with the Honorable David W. Crane, from the Department of Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss the Department of Energy's implementation of the bill in IRA. All of us at DOE are extremely grateful for the leadership of this committee in forming and enacting these landmark pieces of legislation and the ongoing partnership during their implementation. We are bolstering our national energy security at this time of global instability. We're creating millions of lasting, good-paying jobs and helping communities across the country tackle huge challenges and take full advantage of opportunities made available to them by these landmark pieces of legislation. We are also assisting communities in realizing the impacts of rapid energy technology transitions and ensuring that cities and towns across America have access to new energy technologies that can reduce families and businesses' energy bills as quickly as they can be deployed. Between Bill and IRA, Congress has provided more than $97 billion for over 60 new programs under the purview of the Department of Energy. I'm proud to say, as we sit here today, that we've announced 111 funding opportunities totaling over $72.8 billion for applications from the public and private sector, with a special mission to ensure that tribes and underserved and traditional energy communities have a seat at the table. Of this total, we have selected so far 455 recipients for award negotiations, totaling $17.8 billion through competitive funding and $14.3 billion through allocated formula funding, including the home rebates program. In fact, in just the last week, we've announced award selections for over $10 billion between hydrogen and transmission awards. From selection, we move directly to negotiation of awards and then to full design, project development, and groundbreaking. During all these phases, we must ensure that the taxpayer dollars are well spent on well-developed, impactful projects that drive innovation. We are here to demonstrate technology and drive market adoption and stimulate private sector financing of projects that will serve as fundamental elements of the 21st century economy for decades to come. I look forward to sharing how DOE is meeting these goals through thoughtful program design, extensive community and stakeholder outreach, rigorous and merit-based decisions led by career staff who are subject matter experts, ongoing project management, and a robust risk and vetting process for awardees and applicants. The Department takes seriously its responsibilities to manage competitive funding opportunities and loan programs purposefully to the benefit of the taxpayers. It's of great importance both to me and to this committee that we have a robust due diligence and oversight mechanism to ensure integrity in our programs and to ensure we are meeting and exceeding the goals of the legislation. The majority of the programs under Bill and IRA are competitively funding opportunities to demonstrate and to deploy next-generation energy infrastructure. For FOAs, we conduct extensive outreach to industry communities, nonprofits, and think tanks, other stakeholders, and with other DOE offices to develop a better understanding of the opportunities and challenges. Once applications are submitted, we undertake a rigorous merit review process. That includes an initial check for eligibility followed by review by a panel of independent experts. This includes a review of technical merit, financial and market viability, the work plan, management team, and the proposed community benefits. This review may include additional questions to the applicants, potential interviews, and review by the ARDES, Office of Research, Technology, and Economic Security, which I will explain more. With the enactment of Bill and IRA, it's become more important than ever for the Department to have a comprehensive and rigorous approach to research, technology, and energy security, or as we say, ARDES, for both awards and loans. Over the past year, DOE developed and continues to improve upon a number of measures to mitigate risks that foreign governments who are adversarial to the U.S. pose to our scientific and technological development ecosystem, supply chains, and intellectual property. DOE enhanced its existing vetting processes to ensure that risk of undue foreign influence are considered earlier in the competitive process and throughout the life of a DOE-supported project loan. DOE also included strict ARTES requirements for financial assistance and loan programs. For example, no person participating in foreign talent program sponsored by a country of risk may participate in a project. We are examining foreign connections associated with individuals and entities proposed to participate in the project. This includes sharing some intellectual property, foreign collaborations, foreign ownership, and foreign affiliations. In conclusion, the Department of Energy looks forward to seeking the guidance of this committee as we continue to ensure the integrity of the implementation of the Bill and IRA. These historic laws provide an unparalleled catalytic investment to our nation's infrastructure and energy security, and the Department stands ready to meet this moment while ensuring that we are executing stringent oversight and stewardship of the taxpayer dollar. As we look to secure the U.S. global leadership in energy technology development and infrastructure, We also know that the investment in our nation's energy infrastructure is not just a 5-year or decade-long project. It is a very long-term investment in the energy future of the United States. We look forward to working with this committee and for the partnership between the Department of Energy and the members of this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. And now we're going to have the Honorable Mr. Jigger Shaw, Director of the Loan Programs Office, Department of Energy.
Thank you, Chairman.
Turn your,
Oh,
there we go.
Rookie mistake.
No problem.
Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, and distinguished committee members, I too would like to express my gratitude for the opportunity to join you today. I have had the privilege of serving as the Director of the Loan Programs Office, or LPO, since 2021. LPO supports the DOE's private sector-led, government-enabled approach to developing a new American industrial strategy. The United States faces a deployment challenge. LPO exists to help bridge that gap. Since 2005, LPO has financed innovative energy and manufacturing projects, catalyzing the deployment of nuclear power, utility-scale wind and solar, and domestic advanced technology vehicle manufacturing, while directly supporting nearly 50,000 family-sustaining jobs in the process. At the same time, LPO has prioritized its responsibility to protect taxpayer resources. Since the creation of LPO, dedicated federal staff have strengthened program oversight, institutionalized world-class risk management practices, and implemented portfolio-wide safeguards and monitoring of all LPO projects. The fact is, similar to what Undersecretary Crane explained for competitive funding opportunities, LPO conducts rigorous due diligence that is comparable to, if not more stringent than, what might be done in the private lending market. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act enhanced and augmented LPO's authorities, sending a signal that Congress trusts and expects LPO to meet this moment. And the private sector has noticed. Our applicant pipeline has 177 active applications seeking over $157 billion in financing, from advanced nuclear to carbon management to sustainable aviation fuels. We do not pick and choose the technologies that come to our door, and we evaluate applications across all statutorily eligible technologies on a level playing field. Since the start of the Biden-Harris administration, LPO has issued or committed more than $21 billion for projects across the country, including in Arizona, Kentucky, Louisiana, Nevada, Utah, and other states. These projects support deployment of clean hydrogen technology, virtual power plants, domestic critical materials production, and more. We have also clarified our application process for borrowers and are implementing recent changes, including Section 1706 and State Energy Financing Institution, or SEFI, authorities. LPO will continue partnering with the private sector to finance high-impact projects while taking measured risk and exercising rigorous due diligence to ensure that our future energy is built by American workers on American soil. I look forward to answering your questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. And now we have the Honorable Terry Donaldson, Inspector General, Department of Energy. Terry? Turn your.
Second rookie mistake. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member Barrasso, members of the committee, for inviting me to speak here today. I'm going to comment on just a few of the many risk factors, then I'm going to talk for a little while about due diligence and why the private sector model isn't going to work. So in my testimony, we lay out 12 different categories that all present substantial risks. I want to emphasize probably the most important fact that brings me here today is that all of those things are happening at the same time, and I've never seen that. 71 new programs, all trying to develop criteria, including due diligence criteria. You have massive amounts of money moving quickly. All of these things happening at once create a level of risk that may candidly be unprecedented in terms of amounts of federal money moving in such a complicated landscape. You know, even the PRAC money, huge amounts of which were lost and stolen, had simpler criteria than the dollars we're talking about here today. So I cannot say often enough that this is a very risky landscape. On the issue of not funding our adversaries, I am greatly concerned about how things are going in that regard. The department has set up a vetting center, which is a step in the right direction, but it is now 6 months old. It has 3 employees. It has no written procedures. There is no clear path on what projects will be vetted, what the criteria will be used when they are vetted. It has a very, very long way to go, and that's of huge concern to me. Now, a few minutes on due diligence. My background is I was at a very large law firm, and I was doing due diligence on large energy deals for many years, so this is something I know a little bit about. Private sector due diligence is 2 groups of trained gladiator lawyers going into a room with a very clear goal that the project make money. And that model works really well. I was one of those gladiators in the room, blood, guts, and hair, but it works really well because there's a clearly defined goal. You're protecting your client's interest. In this setting, clearly defined goals really don't exist. Loss hasn't been even defined, right? What amount of loans defaulting will even be successful? So due diligence is very different. Huge difference is that on the government side of this equation, it's not their money. Right? And back in the 70s, the federal government finally responded to what I refer to as the monopoly money syndrome. Right? It's a lot easier to spend the government's money than to spend your own or even your client's money. Clients hold people highly accountable. So in response to that, they came up with the Inspector General Act. So what inspectors general do is perform that independent audit function, and they answer the question of where did the money land? So I am not accountable to anyone other than you, right? To say, did this even work? So there has to be a clearly defined goal. The analogy in the private sector is the audit chair on the board, completely independent, typically does not report to anyone other than the board. And that function is very, very well funded. So there is a graph in my materials which shows what volume of these dollars, what amount of projects I am currently funded to audit. And I will tell you that in the private sector, you would never see a graph that looks like that. Projects are rigorously audited, and they're audited independently for a very, very important reason, because that is how you know whether or not you've got the benefit of the deal, by having an independent set of eyes looking at those materials. So as we sit here today, I am the poorest funded Inspector General in the federal government, viewed proportionately. The Department of Energy took on massive new mission elements, massive amounts of money. I was funded very, very little. And as we sit here today, I do not have the support of the Secretary in seeking to transfer some of those already appropriated funds over to the Office of the Inspector General. And that's unfortunate, because at the end of the day, Inspector Generals don't lose money, they make money. The more you audit, the more you recover. So $1 for an Inspector General, at least as of 2021, the Council of Inspectors General was calculating return on investment at about 1 to 20. So $1 to an Inspector General is $20 you get back. So the more you care about those mission elements, the more you should pay attention to making sure that your independent audit function has the staff and the people to be doing its job. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it very much. We'll start our questions right now. I'm going to go right with you, Ms. Donaldson. I think it was a great presentation of what we're concerned about.
Thank you.
With all the good that can be done, all the intent that was done for the good that should be returned, where have you taken this to the Secretary? Where do you go for your support? Do you go to the Secretary level and ask for that support?
Yes, and to OMB. And many of you, I've briefed many of you on the same subject.
Okay.
So we're about 2 years behind now, so we've been on the Hill and working to try to correct this problem for about that amount of time.
And you have not gotten the favorable response you need or the support that you need right now. With all the money that's coming towards that, and I'll go right to Mr. Shaw now, the amount of money that's going unprecedented to where you have responsibilities in making sure it's done. Can you look at the basically technologies that we're trying to develop here? And can you say that this, are there any pie in the sky that doesn't have proven technology? Or is this a lot of proven technology that hasn't been matured? How would you rate that?
Senator, thank you so much.
Such as hydrogen. It's been around forever, right?
Thank you so much for your question. You know, as the Inspector General suggested, I've also been in the private sector for a long time doing a lot of due diligence on projects. What I would say is that the Department of Energy Loan Programs Office has an ability to do due diligence on these projects that many private sector banks don't have, because we have access to the 10,000 engineers, scientists, and experts on the DOE platform. So the vast majority of these projects, I would say, the technology is actually originated from R&D programs that were funded by the Department of Energy. So for many of these technologies that are frankly scary to the private sector, which is why the Loan Programs Office was created, we can do rigorous due diligence and look back into demonstration projects and other data that we have to see whether the technology will work. So we never take will it work or won't it work risk today here at the Loan Programs Office. We do take execution risk, scale-up risk, a lot of other risks that are real risks that we have to do due diligence on. Also, the average due diligence process for the Loan Programs Office is over 12 months. And so we're hiring independent engineers, market advisors, and others to give us a third-party view, as was suggested and required by the Congress in the 2020.
Let me ask this question here: do you all work together, or are you close in the same offices or anything of that sort? Where's your office located?
We're all in the exact same building, Senator.
In the exact same building. Do you all work, and basically the concerns you have and him being responsible for the loans that go out the door, and what you're saying, I believe that this has been missed or not looked at or this or that, or are you all collaborating on that?
We do. I have a monitoring project, so we have data that we're collecting on a monthly basis from the department. That's how I know about the vetting center. And we do have fairly regular meetings where we discuss risk.
Well, I think you all know that our concern is basically countries that we don't have our same values. And basically right now it's targeted on China, since China has a monopoly on things that we seem to want to do as an administration, that we don't have basically a secure supply chain to do them on our own. So we're trying to accelerate how we can get into that market and be more self-reliant, or relying on actors that we have that are basically reliable, such as free trade agreement countries, things of that sort. And that's where the credits come in. Are we able to basically find out what maybe China is still receiving, because we are circumventing what the intent was of the bill to basically make us independent and break as quickly as we can from China dependency, and stop that from happening, or prohibiting a loan going out? And next of all, our loans. Is money going out the door before people are taking the risk of to get a production tax credit or investment tax credit? They got to either be producing or investing. They've got to put their capital at risk. Is any money going out the door before they have come to the table with their risk, their capital at risk?
Senator, thank you for the question. I'm happy to answer it for the Loan Programs Office, and happy to have David answer it for the rest of DOE. For the Loan Programs Office, we have a deal that we recently announced for Core. And in that, we're talking about an American company that's been around for 60 years. In order to accelerate bringing lithium-ion battery manufacturing to the United States, they partnered with a Chinese company. That company has put their technology into Arizona, right? And they have, we have done several things here. One is,
I understand that technology was basically stolen from the United States to begin with, and they basically matured
that's exactly what I was going to say. That, I mean, as somebody who's an entrepreneur and has done this for a long time, I mean, there really was a policy in this country for commercializing your technology in other continents, right? We did not have the tools here. The Inflation Reduction Act has given folks the tools to be able to commercialize our technology here in this country. Some of that is, being brought back from other continents back to this country. And there are ways for us to protect the U.S. taxpayer. A couple of things. One is there are foreign entities of concern that are trying to put provisions into board representation. So we do full due diligence on that to make sure that none of those provisions exist. Second, we make sure that all IP licenses are one way, so that the technology comes to the United States, tied to the American worker, but no additional innovations that occur here can go back to that country. And we did that diligence here. Third, foreign talent recruitment programs. The vast majority of our companies don't know what a foreign talent recruitment program is. So we have to explain to them what it is, how to monitor for it, and how to make sure that they're not susceptible to it. And the last piece of it is we need to make sure that they understand that we need to see the ownership stake of those companies going down, so the Chinese ownership stake goes
Mr.
down.
Crane, I'm over my time. Real quick, I want you to be thinking, because I'm going to come back and ask at a time, but the GREET model we've talked about, especially with hydrogen and what it's doing, and you met briefly with some people we have a lot of concern about. I want to get back to that so you can think about that one, okay? The thing I'm more concerned about right now, are any of you all looking at what the CBO score was on the IRA and what is happening now, how you implement that bill that might be greater than what the model was?
I mean, an analysis, no, and not in my part of the Department of Energy are we scoring.
Are you scoring basically looking at CBO score versus what
No.
you are looking at now as far as the demand? Are you looking at that, Terry?
Sir, I don't have a project underway looking at that exact issue.
Okay, we'll get back to that because I want to. This time I'll tell Senator Brasso. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Inspector General Donaldson, welcome back to the committee.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you being here, and your testimony I think was excellent. You talked about there are 12 categories of increased risk to taxpayer money and being used properly. Now, you're in a position confirmed by the United States Senate to be responsible in looking at protecting taxpayer money. And what I heard you say is that proportion to the amount of money going out from the Department of Energy, the ability that you have to look into that from your side or your staff is the worst in government. And that you've asked the Secretary for more, and the Secretary has stonewalled or blocked the opportunity to get that money. So there's a concern as we're looking at taxpayer dollars. So let me talk about this, because you said there are 12 categories of increased risk. I want to ask about this one. So there is a private trade association. It was founded by Mr. Shaw, sitting next to you. And he's in charge of the Department of Energy loan program. It's called Clean Tech Leaders Roundtable. He founded the organization. From what I see, it appears to be a gatekeeper for companies seeking DOE funding from him, and he founded the organization, not anymore. But one is called Sonova, which recently received a $3 billion loan from the Department of Energy, $3 billion. One of the board members of the group that he founded is also on the board of Sonova. They got the $3 billion, same guy getting the money on his board that he founded. My concern is this could be the next Solyndra. The Solyndra was $500 million. This could be $3 billion of taxpayer money. Now, Mr. Shaw has reportedly been a guest speaker at least 10 clean tech sponsored events, the group he founded. And at these events, if you're a member of his group that he founded, they get special access to him. And he's the guy that's directing the loan program. So Department of Energy even recently co-hosted an event with Clean Tech, this group that he founded. Do you believe that Department of Energy's safeguards to prevent conflicts of interest in its loaning practices are satisfactory, or do they need to be improved?
Thank you, Senator Brasso. I do have a project underway. It is still very new, looking at conflicts of interest, particularly in the loan program office. I will say, and there was quite a few facts that you were chatting about there, Mr. Shaw does have access to outstanding ethics counsel at the Department of Energy. I'm sure he's already working with her on some of those issues. My job and how I've structured this project, which will look at conflicts, is not to see whether or not the minimum existing conflicts, laws, and rules are being met. It's to provide a broader universe of tools that they may want to strap on and enact and follow because of some of the very special circumstances surrounding this program. So the whole idea of ethical protections is something that you start at the floor, right, the federal requirements, you can certainly do more. So my staff is looking at both. Are they meeting the floor and making recommendations on what other things they may want to consider to protect these funds?
No, I appreciate that, because we're talking about $3 billion, 6 times larger than Solyndra, but actually there are hundreds of billions of dollars in place. So, Mr. Shaw, you appear to be all in on the Clean Tech Leaders Roundtable, going to their meetings, special access to members. That's the former trade association that you founded. You've spoken to at least 10 or more private events hosted by them. You've even given a loan to a company that shares a board member, and that was for $3 billion. But what this Green Tech is now saying, it's hundreds of billions, hundreds. Dollar sign, dollar sign, dollar sign, dollar sign, dollar sign. We love Jagger Shaw, love you. They love you, hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, I think conflict of interest, potential conflict of interest. Jigarsaw just became one of the most important players in energy. This is the new CEO of the company that you founded, that they get access to you. It is astonishing. This is a social media post from your former trade association's current executive director. Sounds like she thinks she hit the lottery, and apparently she did. She is openly touting clean tech's access specifically to you, hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars that you're the one that's handing it out. I think it's a very bad look for you personally and a very bad look for the Department of Energy. Will you commit to refrain from associating with your previous trade association for the rest of your tenure at the Department of Energy?
Senator Barrasso, thank you for that very important question. I think it's important to take a step back and understand the role that I have at the Loan Programs Office. The Secretary, when she was in her confirmation hearing, suggested, truthfully, that the Loan Programs Office was dormant. So my job has been to gain private sector trust, and so I'm all in, for sure, on American innovators and entrepreneurs. And I have spared no event or time or conference to figure out how to promote the Loan Programs Office. But because of your excellent oversight and the oversight of the Inspector General, the Loan Programs Office has been substantially improved since 2011 and 2012. We now have a risk management group, a portfolio management group, and so I have no role to play whatsoever in choosing who gets a loan. In fact, those decisions are made by federal staff. My job is to get people to take the extraordinary step of spending a lot of time and effort to participate in the Loan Programs Office and ask us for a loan so that we can evaluate it.
So, Mr. Chairman, let me just reflect that the witness just refused to commit to refrain from associating with this previous trade organization. And hold that back up again. He has refused in front of this committee to commit to refrain from associating with his previous organization that talks about hundreds of billions of dollars from him. I asked him a straightforward question, will you commit to refraining? He refused to answer. So whether or not you found some nice little loophole, this is Ethics 101. It's a bad look for you. It's a bad look for the program. It's a bad look for the Secretary of Energy. And it's a bad look for the Biden administration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have now Senator Heinrich.
Moving on from that little bit of theater, Mr. Shaw, let's start with why we need an LPO. Why doesn't the private sector do this? And what is the value of the Loan Program Office?
Senator, thank you for your question. The Loan Programs Office was originally established in the 2005 Energy Act because what we realized was that the Department of Energy was extraordinary and still is extraordinary at invention, but that we haven't been as extraordinary at getting those technologies commercialized here and tied to the American worker. Part of the reason for that is because our commercial banking system really doesn't want to take any perceived or actual risk in scaling up technology. And so the Loan Programs Office sits to be able to evaluate these technologies and to help commercialize them here. Our remit is only on American soil, so we can only fund projects that are scaling up technology here. And we have been active across the board, as the chairman suggested, in nuclear power, advanced fossil projects, hydrogen, renewables, and many other sectors.
So for either of you, for years we saw American manufacturing and capital flow out of the United States, particularly to China, but to many different parts of the world, Southeast Asia. And today we're seeing, to some degree, that pattern reversing. That's a policy win. How do we protect the American taxpayer and our American intellectual property while that occurs?
Well, Senator, thank you for the question and the focus on manufacturing. And it's still fairly early days, but you're right. Even the Wall Street Journal has talked about the manufacturing renaissance in the United States, and that's before the Department of Energy money is being deployed. So let's
start there. What's the scale of that? Since the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, How many factory announcements have we seen? How many,
Oh,
how much private capital?
I thought, we can get you a more accurate number, but the number is $100 billion or more. Jigar, do you have?
Growing by the day.
Yes, exactly. And that's also an indirect impact of the Inflation Reduction Act has led to that manufacturing in anticipation. But you asked, how do we protect, and this gets back to the vetting center and my colleague, the Inspector General's comments. And I can just say, being more involved with what we call the equity side of the house, the financial assistance, the vetting center process has worked for us. We are going through that. Most of the programs we have are more sure technology, so it's more about Chinese ownership than it is about proprietary technology, although we have that in long-duration energy storage. And we work with the vetting center, and they go through all our projects. They have they access the intelligence and counterintelligence, and so far, if you look at the recent selections that we've announced, I think the process is working. There's always room for improvement. We look forward to working with the Inspector General. But
one way to measure
go ahead.
whether things are working, obviously, is return on investment. So, Mr. Shaw, what is the track record of LPO generally, and then more recently, if the data allows, in terms of return on an investment?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. The Loan Programs Office measures its impact in a couple of ways, right? We're not here to make a profit, right? We're here to commercialize American technology. But the U.S. Congress has allocated to us credit subsidy, which is money that we can use for a loan loss reserve. We've allocated roughly $5 for loan loss reserve for a realized loss of roughly $1, right? And so we've allocated a lot more for losses. And as the chairman suggested, the interest income that we've earned has exceeded by 4x any losses. And so there's a couple ways of looking at that. Yeah. But the more important way of looking at it, in my opinion, is we provided a loan guarantee to the first 5 100-megawatt solar projects in the United States. We catalyzed over $1 trillion of investment into solar because of the early support we provided when no bank would do that deal. The same thing's true with our loan to Tesla on the automotive side. I think that America's dominance in electric vehicle technology really comes from our early bet on Tesla. I do believe that the early investments we're making in this particular round will also have that level of success over time, and there will still be some losses, right? I mean, I think that the Congress
and we
gave
should
us,
understand that.
Absolutely.
You might want to clarify, because I think the question was asked by Senator Brasso. The companies that you had previously been involved with that have an exclusive to where a person has to have as a fee being paid to come to those, and you being to that, or if it was a public event. So a public event is a public event. People come. There's no requirements. There's no fees or that. Do you want to explain that at all? Because I know that was quite contentious at the end there. How you feel about that?
Thank you, Chairman. I attend a lot of events, and I'm happy to distance myself from any further dinners from the Clean Tech Leaders Roundtable.
I think all we're saying is that, like with the Clean Tech Leaders, if people have to pay to have access, that's what they're talking about. If they're not paying to access as a public, I think you should be able to do whatever you think's benefit.
Chairman, the point I want to make here is that I'm trying to figure out what access they're paying for. Since I don't make any decisions on which loans we actually underwrite or approve, having access to me is like, I'm more accessible than a ham sandwich, right? I go to conferences like RE+. I go to conferences like CERAWeek. I go to lots of places wherever American innovators and entrepreneurs need to meet me, so that they can be convinced that this country wants them to onshore and reshore their technology here in this country. I am willing to talk to them. But what I'm concerned about is the insinuation that the oversight that the Senate and the Congress has done, as well as the Inspector General, hasn't been fully implemented. In fact, it has. And so there is no political influence on these loans. These loans are being overseen by career federal staff.
I just wanted to make sure I gave you opportunity on that. Now we're going to go to Senator Cassidy.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you all. Mr. Crane, there was a recent awarding of, and ladies, I'm sorry, there's a recent awarding of the HALO hubs, and Louisiana was an applicant but did not receive. The Secretary was kind enough to call me and tell me that, but that's just the breaks as I first took it. But since I've become concerned about the process, since we're talking about the integrity of the process, that's what I'd like to explore. I'm told that of the merit reviewers of the Louisiana application, several of them did not provide any comments or ask any questions regarding the application. Frankly, that was like excellent, bad, needs to improve, like nothing. So it's unclear to me that they actually reviewed it. In fact, there's no evidence that they actually reviewed it. What I'm worried about is that the fix was in before we even started. Next. On August the 3rd of this year, HALO Hub leadership in the state of Louisiana had a phone call at DOE to discuss the status of the program. This occurred as other hydrogen hub applicants were being asked to interview with DOE in relation to their applications. The HALO Hub in Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma had not been contacted for an interview, but DOE said two things specifically: that the interviews were to answer questions about gaps in the applications, and the interviews did not represent a down selection process. Is all that correct?
Yes, the interviews did not.
Okay.
But I'm
So
sorry,
how
what
many-
was the question before? Was it a down select? It was a two-part question. What was the?
I was just setting context. So how many hydrogen hubs that were not interviewed were ultimately selected as an awardee?
None of the hydrogen hubs that were not interviewed were.
But yet
so-
the interviews were specifically said not to be part of a down selection process, because it turns out if you weren't interviewed, you weren't ultimately selected.
That's the way it turned out, but at the time of the phone call, the people doing the interviews did not know whether a hub would be selected that wasn't interviewed.
I accept that perhaps, but the fact that like multiple reviewers looking at the HALO Hub from Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma didn't make a comment or didn't ask a question. When the Secretary called me, she mentioned she had been told, when I asked why wasn't Louisiana selected, and our three-state consortium, it said it was because Shell had pulled out of the HALO Hub and that communities were not supportive. Turns out Shell did not pull out of the HALO Hub, and that Louisiana was never notified that there were communities not supportive. Do you have any sense of why she was told those were the reasons that we were not selected?
Well, Senator, first of all, I'd say that to me, the main reason is that the competition for these hubs was intense.
Well, let me go back to that.
It was a bit
What I'm trying to understand is the criteria by this, because
Yes.
frankly, I'm thinking the fix was in.
Senator, I would respectively suggest that no fix went in. And
Let me go.
I
Let me go to the next point. Then.
Okay.
We were also told that there was an issue that with the HALO Hub, that there was that the existing hydrogen pipeline in Louisiana was not open access. How many states in which were rewarded these hubs? How many of them currently have a hydrogen pipeline?
I don't think there's any state. I think the
Texas,
only
that's it.
hydrogen pipeline is the non-open access one between Louisiana and Texas.
So I guess what I'm concerned about is if we're being told that it's because there's not an open access pipeline, but like of the other 15 states besides Texas, none of them had a hydrogen pipeline at all, that Shell had not pulled out, and we were never told that the communities objected, and that several reviewers did not comment or say anything about the application, implying they never looked at it. My gosh, why would I have a different impression than that the fix was in?
Senator, I accept your concern and disappointment. The part that I would particularly say is almost certainly inaccurate is the part about the independent merit reviewers, because all 28 applications were forensically reviewed by
But there are no comments or questions written by them. This is according to the state of Louisiana, which has reviewed this.
Well, I mean, the questions of clarifications, there was not a uniform setting of questions or clarifications to any of the 28. I mean, not
So far, I haven't really found a reason why the reviewer would find fault. The other thing that has been clear, although this was not part of the legislation that we passed, after announcing the hub competition, the Department of Energy announced plans to use $1 billion of the hub money to run a centralized DOE-planned so-called demand-side program to stimulate hydrogen demand. Now, in the Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma application, which was unsuccessful, not clear why, because every reason we've been given so far does not seem valid, and we got several of the reviewers did not comment upon, the applicants had committed to taking 3,000 metric tons of production of hydrogen a day, and demand would match this production by 2030. So that which DOE said they had to model and create was part of the application and was a fait accompli, if you will. So again, when I look at why would this application not be selected, I can't help but notice that 11 of the 15 or 16 states are kind of represented by Democratic senators, including states that don't have a history of the sort of production of hydrogen and other components such as Louisiana does, that don't have an existing infrastructure such as we. And yet somehow they managed to get a $1 billion project. Tell me why I should have faith in this process.
I could go through the process to show that, the independent merit review, the federal panels, the selection officers are all career civil servants, and they evaluated many, many criteria. You mentioned some of the criteria which I think were to the advantage of the Louisiana hub. Also, because the bill, it was effectively an intra-regional competition, so the Gulf Coast had multiple very, very strong competitors.
But there was only one that ended up getting it, and that was the one in Texas. And yet you look at other places without our ecosystem, without our infrastructure, they did get it. That's why I'm kind of like, whoa, the place with all the infrastructure got one, and it's otherwise scattered around a lot of states, disproportionately represented by Democrats. And as Deion Sanders would say, Mr. Crane, look at me. Yeah, their career, but look at me. They don't answer.
I'm looking at you, Senator.
Yeah, they don't answer to political leadership. Of course they do. I'm very concerned about this. Let me ask in closing, because you've been indulgent. Let me go in over. Would the Department of Energy be willing to share completely the deliberative process and the documents thereof with my office so that we can review as part of my function of this oversight committee?
We would be happy to set up a meeting with your office to go through in considerable detail the selection process.
And to share with us those documents so we can make our own assessment as well?
I would have to get back to you on that, Senator.
Otherwise, I have to file a FOIA, which seems inappropriate for a Congressional Oversight Committee.
I thought that FOIA, I thought there was commercially sensitive information. I'm not an expert on FOIA, but we are. I think we would be happy to work with your office to set up a more detailed briefing. And if we start there, and if you're unsatisfied, we could take it from there.
I appreciate that. I yield.
Thank you, Senator.
For your indulgence.
Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Crane, we've heard Ms. Donaldson recommending that expanding funding for the DOE's Office of Inspector General by rescinding some of the funds given by Congress for carrying out the Infrastructure Reduction Act, Investment Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, including funding for programs under your oversight, would be a good thing. Does DOE have the legal authority to transfer funds to the Office of the Inspector General?
Senator Hirono, I'm not an expert on that. I do know, as you're saying, that the department, and I certainly support this, that the Inspector General office needs more funding. And I think we've asked for 92% more funding for the next fiscal year for the Inspector General's office, which of course we all support. The idea of can you reassign money, I'm new to government. I have no idea if you're allowed to do that.
Okay, well, you know what? Frankly, I believe that you do, in fact, do not have that authority. You should check, okay? Because while you agree that there should be more funds for the Inspector General that under the programs that I mentioned, under the acts that I mentioned, I don't think you have that authority. So maybe we need to change the law or something so that you can provide more funding. We should think about that. So one of the points made by Ms. Donaldson is that the vetting process, and Secretary Crane, you mentioned that the vetting center process has worked. Is this the three-person center that Ms. Donaldson referred to?
I don't think 3 persons is the current staffing of the.
What is the current staffing?
I'm not sure that that's, I mean, given the sensitive nature of what the vetting center does, I think it's more than double that in terms of the immediate employees, but they also leverage these other resources like the intelligence and counterintelligence office. Senator Hirano, what I would say is, at least in terms of the financial assistance programs, the vetting center takes as much time as they need to review all that they need to review. So if you look at the $10 billion of awards that we announced within the last week on transmission hydrogen, if it had not been for the vetting center process, we would have been announcing those awards at the beginning of September. So they take their time. It's only when they're done and they're comfortable that we move forward with selection.
Well, they have a big job to do, I take it, because it is the vetting center that makes all kinds of determinations relating to some $97 billion that the DOE got under these 2 acts that I mentioned. So even a doubling, that's 6 people. You can see that we have a concern about the adequacy of the resources that the vetting center has. And I think that it would behoove you to take a look at whether or not they are adequately sourced.
Senator, it's a very good point. They are staffing up, and the Inspector General's concerns, all of our concerns about the $92 billion, we are all aligned on that. What I'm just here to assure you is none of the awards that we've announced in the last couple months have gone out without being thoroughly vetted by the
I think it's very clear that we have concerns about making sure that the funds that were appropriated, historic funds, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have done it. In fact, we're really behind the 8 ball in terms of climate change and the impact. So these bills, these acts were a good thing. We just want to make sure that, that these funds are going where they should. So turning to wildfires, excuse me. I did have a question about how a small state like Hawaii, hold on for a second. Where's my wildfire question? Thank you. So, Secretary Crane, communities in Maui are still recovering from the August wildfires, and one thing is certain, wildfire is becoming an increasing threat in communities all across Hawaii and in the West particularly. Various utilities, including in California and Oregon, have taken steps in recent years to improve their equipment to better monitor and be resilient during wildfire events, and these steps have come at significant cost. For communities with a relatively small population and utility rate base, like those in Hawaii and the rural West, what role do you see the federal government playing in helping utilities become more prepared for increasing wildfire risk?
Senator, it's so important to every American that's exposed to that, and Hawaii did win one of the Wildfire Resilience Awards for Maui that was announced after the terrible fires there. The transmission awards that were just announced yesterday included 4 other awards across the western states for wildfire mitigation. And certainly, one of the good things about the transmission program is there's a second tranche of funds that are going to be put to solicitation within the next couple of months. And certainly, we're very happy with the wildfire mitigation we're doing in the first round. We'd love to see more of it in the second round.
So basically, the role of the federal government is to provide resources, money, to enable smaller communities in rural areas and communities such as in our state to do the kind of mitigation that they need. That you are there as a source of funds.
Yes, Senator, we're here to help.
Thank you. We will need more of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all the witnesses for being here. Mr. Shaw, can I just follow up? I didn't understand your answer to the ranking member or to the chairman. Did you say, so you do attend dinners with industry leaders where they pay to see you speak? Was that a yes or a no? I didn't hear.
No, I attend many events, some of which I'm invited to speak at.
And they don't pay. They don't pay.
And many don't pay, and some are like paid conferences and others. But one of the things.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait. That was a yes and a no. So let's just go back. Do you attend events where people pay to see you speak?
I have attended where people pay to attend the event.
Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's important for us to meet potential applicants, American innovators and entrepreneurs who want to scale up their technology.
Applicants for loan programs?
Applicants for DOE funding.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You think it's a good idea to go to events where people are trying to get federal money and they're paying to see you?
They're not paying to see me.
I thought you just said you spoke at events where people paid.
Not to see me. I mean, I'm not that important.
You're the... Wow. You'll learn new things every day. What's your title? You're the director of what?
Of the Loan Programs Office.
You're the director of the loan programs for the federal government, Department of Energy. People who want to get loans from the government are paying to see you, and you think that that's fine? That's not a rhetorical question.
I think I've answered that I go to many conferences and events. I've had hundreds of stakeholder events. The goal is to get people.
You're going to events where people are paying to see you who want money from the government. You're the director of the loan program. Do you think that that's okay? You don't see any conflict of interest with that?
I think given the extraordinary amount of improvements that we've made in our office based on our work with the Inspector General and the Herb Allison report, et cetera, I do not make a decision on whose applications are accepted in the loan programs.
But you don't think there's an appearance of a conflict of interest that people are paying to get access to you?
I think that it would be a conflict of interest if people are paying to get access to me, but I don't.
Okay, isn't that what they're doing when you speak at events people paid to get into? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, if they're not paying, that's fine, but I thought you just said a second ago they're paying.
We do a lot of public events, whether it's, and we are very transparent as part of this administration. Every time I get a question, which is hard to answer, we update our blog posts and make sure that everyone knows what we're doing. But the goal of the Loan Programs Office is to get as many people as possible to think that they can actually commercialize their technology.
Well, what I think they think is that they can get access to you by paying to go to these dinners. I mean, listen, it may not be an ethics violation. It should be, but maybe it's not. I just suggest to you, I don't think it's a good look. I don't think it's a good idea to go to paid dinners where people are paying money to get access to you because, in your own words, they want loans. They want loans, federal dollars, taxpayer money. They're paying money to go get access to you. Maybe that's really common. In fact, knowing this government, it probably is really common. But if it is, it's a bad idea. I just submit to you. I'm kind of amazed by this. Ms. Donaldson, can I just ask you about another ethics issue at the Department of Energy? I'm so glad you're here, by the way. Thank you for being here, and thank you for doing this job. The Wall Street Journal published back in February a report. I'm just going to quote the headline. Here it is. Hundreds of Energy Department officials hold stocks related to agencies' work despite warnings. Have you been tracking this? Have you seen these reports?
I have, Senator.
So that includes, sadly, the Secretary of Energy, who testified right there to this committee in response to questions from me that she didn't own any individual stocks. I asked her 3 times in April. Do you own individual stocks? 3 times. She said, no, absolutely not, absolutely not, absolutely not. 2 months later, she wrote the chairman and said, actually, I did. And she didn't divest of them until May, and then she didn't tell us till a month later. That's a big problem. And the fact that she misled this committee and didn't tell us, the fact that we have all of these Energy Department officials holding stocks related to the agency's work, I mean, what is going on at DOE? Do you have authority to look into this, Ms. Donaldson?
Well, there's a mechanism set up in the law, which you have
And
the
please,
authority
please
to
use your
change, which
microphone.
allows
Ms.
the-
Donaldson, please. Just speak into it if you would.
Oh,
We
sorry.
can all hear you
Sitting-
better.
Yeah, pull a little closer.
So you can, in fact, hold stock and be an employee for the government. You cannot participate in any decisions that might impact the value of that stock. So there's different rules that apply here, and those can be driven by Congress, or they can be driven by regulation or policy. In that particular situation, when you spoke about your questions about other DOE employees, they get notices reminding them, basically. So if they own stock in Ford, they'll get a notice saying, don't forget, nothing having to do with Ford. So those notices don't carry with them any kind of penalty. It's part of the process set up to make sure they keep track of their own, what you would view to be a conflict or a
Okay.
potential conflict.
Well, my time has expired. I just thank you for your work, Ms. Donaldson. I'm going to send you a letter about this and hope that we might ask you to look into and I know the ranking members already asked you to look into Secretary Granholm's testimony before this committee, but I am firmly of the view that we need to change the law here. Senior executive branch officials should not be able to own individual stock, nor should members of Congress. We shouldn't be stock trading, and nor should anybody who is sitting at this table. And so I just am distressed by it just piles up. And I'll just say this isn't a partisan issue. It happened in the last administration. It's members of both parties of Congress. We shouldn't be doing it. I've got bipartisan legislation that would end this, and I think we need to end this practice once and for all. Thank you for your being here.
Thank you, Senator, and I will say that I think I'm very supportive of that legislation. Let me say this to you all to clarify. Of 535 members of Congress, I think that the majority, if not all of us, have spoken at conferences to where people had to pay a registration fee to be there. They didn't have, I understand the appearance-wise, but you have to have get your point across. I think the thing that we were concerned about, sir, Mr. Shaw, is the one that you had definite ties to, and if they had come back in. But still yet, we all were going to conferences. I'll give you Sierra Week. Sierra Week, that's a big one, $1,000, $1,500. Democrats, Republicans, we all go and speak there because we think it's an access to that. And so with that being said, I know you might feel you're unfairly targeted here, but
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think you're absolutely, there is a difference between going to a meeting and speaking where people pay a registration fee, but the group that we're talking about is a group that he founded. And you have to be a member of the group to get special access to 10 different opportunities to go with him, special access if you're a member, and they brag about it. They brag about it online, hundreds of billions of dollars. They love him. He's the co-founder of the group. Sign up, join the group, and you get special access.
Gotcha.
It's just wrong, Mr. Chairman.
gotcha. Anybody else want to say anything about that?
I don't think it's any different than going to Sarah Week. And we've all gone to conferences where people have paid to be there. I think what we've seen here is after years and years of people complaining that government is unresponsive to private industry, we finally have an administration who will meet anyone with any technology, whether it's fossil or renewable or nuclear, and actually work with them in a way that is friendly to the private sector. And that is not something that I think we should be discouraging. We should expect more of it.
Mr. Chairman, look, I want to submit for the record an article entitled "Biden's Energy Loan Czar Founded a Trade Association. Now it's selling access to him." Jigger Shaw's Clean Tech Leaders Roundtable regularly hosts events for companies looking for federal loans. It says, exclusive and invitation only. Included discussion panels with DOE official topics. Show me the money. Mr. Chairman, this is absolutely wrong and it needs to stop. And
You submit that for the record?
I do.
Without objection. Senator Hickenlooper.
I'm dying to weigh in on this discussion. As you know, back when I was a geologist, we would go to Sarah Week. We would go to the American Association of Petroleum Geologists, the Geological Society of America. They would always have these special dinners where you would have to pay to go to the dinner, and you would be there, and Republicans would pay, Democrats would pay, and they would talk to or just people like me. I wasn't, back in those days, I wasn't much involved in politics, but you wanted to hear from the highest sources you could what the landscape looked like. And I'm a big believer in pretty much every opportunity to get more information out to more people. We do better. We do better as a country. Mr. Crane, let me start with you. Obviously, electrification is a key to this great transition, as we call it. We're going to need a reliable and robust grid if we're going to take full advantage of the renewable resources that we're bringing online. Oftentimes where we have renewable resources is not where we have the needed transmission to get those resources to where the demand is. We recently introduced our Big Wires Act that will hopefully make the grid more reliable. It'll connect that low-cost power to where the greatest demand is, whether it's from electric vehicles or whatever. Has DOE taken a close look, and maybe you could describe it a little bit, in terms of interregional transmission connectivity?
Senator Hickenlooper, thank you for your question. Thank you for your leadership in this area. From Secretary Granholm on down, the focus on strengthening, smartening up the transmission system is of the highest priority within the Department of Energy. The particular challenge of interregional transmission is first and foremost on our mind. It's a big part of what the transmission office is focused on. We're excited about some awards that are going to be announced in the next few weeks and as part of the transmission facilitation program, which was part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And we look forward to your legislation, and anything we can do to strengthen the transmission system is good news for us.
And this basically is a catalyst and accelerates the investments we're making in other aspects, right, in the generation.
Precisely.
Great. I appreciate that. And you know, the other thing that, just finishing that last thought, we all, Republican, Democratic senators, all come to you all for these grants that are going out at breakneck speed. I think you guys are doing a remarkable job. The chair received a hydrogen hub grant of significant size. Colorado did not. I would argue that we are more than qualified. I can go down all the lists. But that's the key here is to make sure that we all have full access, which we all did. We provide the information. You have professionals helping make the best decisions we could possibly make. Who gets a loan? Who gets a grant? I think that's the nuts and bolts of this, is that these are complex issues where we're doing the best we can, and the best requires that we have access as much as possible to the people that are going to utilize these grants or these loans. Mr. Shaw, let me ask you a question. Your job, your office is responsible for seeking out and boosting the most promising innovations that'll help us on this great transition in energy. Critical minerals, I always call them essential minerals, but that's back, I'm dating myself when I got my master's in earth and environmental science. When we introduced Big Wires, part of that was really shone a bright light on that. You know, my geology background said that we had to dig deeper, that's pun intended, into critical minerals or essential minerals. How's the DOE working to build our domestic capabilities on critical minerals, particularly when it comes to processing and advanced manufacturing?
Thank you, Senator, for that great question. The Department of Energy has many different offices working on critical minerals: the Advanced Manufacturing Office, the Manufacturing Supply Chain Office, and then the Loan Programs Office was allowed to invest into critical minerals through the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program for minerals that are related to EV batteries, and then out of Title 17 for other critical minerals. We have worked in collaboration with our partners at DOE, but also at DOD, where they have a Defense Production Act mandate to do earlier stage investigation. And so I think what we found is that that the ecosystem around critical minerals really has to be built up. And so for those folks who are earlier stage, they're going to the Department of Defense. We really focus on the folks who are at the end of the process that are ready to start processing critical minerals. And so with that, we've issued a couple of conditional commitments, one for a graphite processing facility in Louisiana, where we're taking some of the highest quality natural graphite away from China and redirecting it here to the United States, as well as finding ways to get lithium out of the ground in Nevada. And we've also provided 2 loans to folks who are using next generation technologies on recycling existing batteries and old batteries that are spent. One was Redwood Materials in Nevada, and the other one's Li-Cycle in Rochester, New York. We have several $1 billion, about $7 billion of additional loan applications that have come in, and we work very closely with them, including referring them to other offices if they're too early for us.
Great. Well, thank you all for your public service. I realize these are tumultuous times around the field of energy, and I have great respect for your willingness to keep working at this despite all the tumultuous events.
Senator Hickenlooper, do you mind if your previous comment where you didn't ask a question was about Colorado's application in the hydrogen hub area? And it's I should have made a point to Senator Cassidy, which I'm now making to you, which is our goal with these regional hydrogen hubs is for them to expand organically, and there were lots of worthy projects. A winning project in Texas, which we'd like to see expand into Louisiana, a winning project essentially in North Dakota that we'd like to see expand into Colorado. I've already given that message directly to your friend and mine, Mr. Frenzel of Excel, that there is, this is the goal, is to create a national hydrogen economy as quickly as we can.
Right, a full-blown network. I understand, and I was really just trying to needle the chair a little bit about his hydrogen hub that he's so proud of. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we're kind of happy that we qualified for the GRIP grant coming out of DOE this week. That was good news for Alaska. Not quite the hydrogen hub. We're still in the ENVI category there, and we're continuing to work on that. We did get a communication that we were being discouraged on that, but we will not be discouraged because we've got extraordinary opportunity, as I think most of you know. This first question, Mr. Shaw, should be super easy, and it follows on Senator Hickenlooper talking about the critical minerals. You mentioned the graphite project there in Louisiana. You've heard me, and the Secretary has heard me comment that I think it's better if we can get the domestic resource here. That's why we call it domestic resource. Let's get it here. Let's not get it in Mozambique. I would just hope that you can commit to this committee that the LPO will prioritize loan applicants that are developing domestic sources and U.S.-based supply chains for our critical minerals. That should be an easy one, I hope.
We absolutely believe that we should be onshoring and reshoring our entire critical mineral supply chain, and I completely agree with you, Senator.
Good, good. Let me talk about a couple of our big projects, neither of which are new to either one of you. I mentioned GRIP and our grid modernization. That's really exciting, I think, for our potential moving forward. Another one that we have been working on for decades and decades is how we can monetize and move our natural gas from the North Slope. It's big, and you know it's big, but it also has extraordinary potential, not only for Alaska's energy security, the entire West Coast, our partners and allies in Asia who are very, very interested in this. And during the negotiations of the infrastructure law, we asked the department, what's the language that we need to allow the gas line to qualify for a loan guarantee from the LPO? And we got the necessary language. We reviewed it. We all agreed that it worked. We included it into the bipartisan infrastructure bill. It was signed into law. And I know we all have different lawyers that can come up with different legal arguments, but we're looking at the response now from DOE and kind of saying it feels like we got the rug pulled out from underneath us with regards to where the department is coming from in the authorities there. So the question this morning, and to either one of you, is whether or not you're aware of any authorities that either you or the Secretary has to utilize already appropriated dollars for the purposes that were laid out in this infrastructure law. And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to resolve this to make sure that we are meeting the intent under the laws there. So any comments that you may have on this? We just met with the governor yesterday on this and trying to get some clarification from the department.
Thank you, Senator. As you know, I have regularly met with the team that's working on developing that project, and I think we've also continued to provide technical assistance to your staff and the rest of the delegation. You know, the goal here is to have American innovators and entrepreneurs be able to build their projects here in the United States, and so I think we're fully aligned with your intent here around making sure these big projects come to fruition.
Well, you can understand the frustration, though, when we worked with the department to get the assistance on the language. We all thought that we were pretty clear here, and now the law is in place, and we've got differing interpretations. I'm hopeful that we're going to see in this next budget that the Secretary includes whatever resources are necessary to establish this program in the office, if you believe it goes otherwise. But we continue to be pushing on this. And again, we feel pretty strongly that the Secretary has the authorities to move forward with this. Let me move forward to another big project. And again, this is one where you have great familiarity. This is one of my favorite geothermal projects in Alaska, trying to develop the Manchin project outside of Unalaska in the Aleutian chain. The chairman is very familiar with it as well. But it's exciting because what this would do is decarbonize one of the busiest fishing ports by volume in the world, not just in the United States, but in the world. And Manchin's been doing their due diligence. They've been working with the Q tribe there in Unalaska for years. Trident Seafoods, you know, significant seafood producers looking to decarbonize their own processes. They've developed plans to move their processing facility to Unalaska to capitalize on this renewable power from Manchin. So together, it's extraordinary what can happen. It's transformative what can happen. And it's kind of one of these chicken and egg type things right now. And we've got significant large-scale infrastructure projects that are contingent on completion of some of these energy innovations. So what we're trying to do, as you all know, is reduce emissions. We're all in agreement here. This works for everybody. And so we need to be able to be working together to get to yes, rather than continuing to find ways that if you haven't met this chronological, gate here, we can't move forward. There is so much writing on this, and I need to emphasize and re-emphasize the significance of what this can mean, not just for the state, but for a global seafood industry. But again, we're trying to stand on our own here, and we just need a little bit of help. So if either one of you have any great updates that you can share with me, that would be very welcome.
Senator, as you know, I'm not allowed to share any details under the Trade Secrets Act from folks who have applied to Loan Programs Office. But what I will say is that we've had a great partnership with your office and the state of Alaska. As you know, your state energy financing institution provision in the bill has been fully implemented. We've onboarded ADA as a CEFI.
And they're very excited about that.
As well as we're looking at several other institutions in Alaska to do that. We've also hired, I think you know, Joe Jacobson in Alaska to really focus on making sure we're providing the customer service that we need to all the extraordinary projects that we're seeing out of your state.
Mr. Chairman, I have a whole bunch of other questions I'll submit for the record, but I look forward to follow up with both you, Mr. Crane, and Mr. Shaw, and to RIG. Thank you for your work. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier in her comments, Senator Murkowski mentioned the GRIP program, and I know Senator Hirono asked questions that I want to build on. But to remind us all, the part of the bipartisan infrastructure law allows for the Grid Deployment Office to administer the $10.5 billion Grid Resiliency Innovation Partnership Program to enhance grid flexibility and resiliency. Now, resiliency of the grid to extreme weather events has been a major priority of mine, with California being sort of an exhibit A on the real-time impacts of the climate crisis. So I was thrilled to hear yesterday's announcement of $3.46 billion under the GRID program for 58 projects across 44 states, including multiple projects in California. Now, as with any award, there's good news for those who received an award and questions by those who had applied but were unsuccessful, at least in this particular round. Question for Mr. Crane: how are we ensuring that there's a wide array of selected applicants, particularly the types of entities owning and operating the infrastructure they're trying to enhance?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Welcome to the committee, and congratulations on the awards that California received yesterday. I actually got to visit with Mayor of Los Angeles, came through our office yesterday, and so we were very excited about that. I don't know, the expression, the proof is in the pudding. I think of the 58 awards for the grid was in 40 states, and the good news, you mentioned the $10.5 billion, only $3.5 billion is going out, so there'll be a second round of awards. And as I mentioned a little earlier, we're very keen to see more wildfire mitigation, and one of the things we're doing on all the follow-on FOAs is doing a gap analysis so that as we put out the second FOA, we can sort of guide applicants from across the country to what we felt that was left undone by the first. And so we have webinars, we put it right into the FOA language, and so, and we're happy to have direct conversations if you'd like.
Wonderful. And I'll just confirm for me that that would include not just new applicants, but applicants that were unsuccessful this round, getting some sort of feedback and guidance on how to have a higher quality application maybe next go around, be more competitive?
We definitely are willing to give feedback to applicants as much as we can. It's just some of these processes are 10 times oversubscribed. So sometimes we know there's a lot of frustration there. We're trying to work through that, Senator, but we will do our best to provide any direct feedback on individual unsuccessful applications that we can.
Okay. Now, another element of the bipartisan infrastructure law was the creation of the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation in our efforts to help deploy zero-emission vehicles and expand related infrastructure. It seems that to date, the Joint Office has focused almost exclusively on light-duty vehicles, despite the fact that it's heavy-duty vehicles that disproportionately contribute to the adverse air quality in communities where there's concentrations of good movement facilities and infrastructure. So one of the reasons I'm glad to be part of this committee now to help raise this issue. Anybody who's monitored hearings in the Environment and Public Works Committee, where I am a member, knows that I've repeatedly asked about the impacts to California's air quality, particularly those areas with significant goods movement infrastructure, and the need to transition to zero-emission heavy-duty vehicles and build out that corresponding infrastructure. So, Mr. Crane, once again, how can the Joint Office expand its focus to also prioritize zero-emission, medium, and heavy-duty infrastructure as part of its core mission?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your focus on this area. I spoke to Gabe, who runs the Joint Office, specifically about this point a few months ago, and he confirmed what you said, that most of their programs were on light-duty vehicles. We think now that we've got the selections out there, particularly on hydrogen, and of course, as you know, there's a question of where do battery vehicles stop and hydrogen begins. We have the California hub, which was a key part of its success was the possibility of creating hydrogen-powered vehicles to do drayage out of the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach. There's also a Pacific Northwest hub. We would love to see the western states become for Class 7, Class 8 vehicles, a hydrogen-powered corridor, you know, both for decarbonizing and for local air quality purposes. So we'd love to work with you, Senator Cortez Masto, and you know, to do that in your region.
Thank you. And I, too, will be submitting some additional questions for the record after today's hearing. But just to end on this note, look forward to working with you to ensure that eligible utilities, particularly those serving areas around high-priority ports, industrial zones, and freight corridors, are submitting the high-quality, high-need applications. And we also want to look at leveraging fundings across programs and across agencies to get maximum benefit. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So let me follow up because I, too, obviously, in the state of Nevada, as you well know, Undersecretary, we talked about this. We applied for the Southwest Hydrogen Innovation Network. And I get it. There's only so much money to go around at any one point in time. I hear from all my colleagues, some of us are disappointed, some of us are happy. I guess that's a good thing because you're not pleasing everyone, right? At the same time, you're hearing from everyone. But the goal here, I think, for many of us, and I'm open to this, and I appreciate your comments about some sort of a broader coalition in the regions when it comes to some of the renewable energy, particularly around the hydrogen innovation. As you well know, we have Air Liquide in Nevada. We have partnered in Nevada with Arizona. I think there is an opportunity for us to explore this even further. So thank you for your comments. I'm going to jump to something off of hydrogen right now, which is the battery grant programs. Nevada is leading the nation in battery manufacturing and recycling. We have the capacity to support the entire supply chain in my home state. For example, Nevada has enough lithium to supply the world for 85 years. 85 years. And in the last years alone, we've seen the clean transportation battery industry create 7,400 new jobs in Nevada and deliver $13 billion of investment. That's why I call Nevada, it's an innovation state. I'm very proud of it. I've worked to lead the efforts to capitalize on this clean energy revolution through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And now companies in my state, like the American Battery Technology, Redwood Materials, and others are receiving vital investments from the Department of Energy. And so thank you. Undersecretary Crane, let me just say, would you agree that these facts and the recent DOE investments in Nevada show the vital role that we can play in addressing our country's supply chain needs?
Yes, I would agree that Nevada is a critical part of the critical mineral supply for batteries, which of course are essential to the electric vehicle revolution. And as you know, you have the 2 awards from the first battery solicitation. There's a second battery supply chain solicitation that will be out shortly, and we're looking to even do more across the battery supply chain.
And we will be paying close attention. Would you also agree that ensuring these investments are happening throughout the country, are not just in some of the traditional manufacturing regions of the U.S., actually strengthens our economy and our national security?
Absolutely, and I do believe when it's all said and done, we will have bipartisan infrastructure law investments in every state.
Thank you. I only have about 2 minutes left, and a number of questions for everyone. But I'm going to focus, Mr. Shaw, on the Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee. As you are aware, I worked with my colleagues last Congress to provide a crucial fix to the Tribal Energy Loan Guarantee Program. Specifically, the Inflation Reduction Act allows for the department to issue loans to tribes and tribal organizations through the Federal Financing Bank. Now, you touched on this in your written testimony. Can you build on that and outline the ways that the IRA fix provided those necessary resources and structure to assist tribes and get energy projects up and running, 1? And then 2, has DOE LPO seen an increase in interested applicants since the enactment?
Thank you for that Thank you for your question, Senator. It is absolutely true that when I came into office, the Tribal Energy Financing Program was not well structured, and the feedback that we got from the tribes was that it was not really meeting its needs. We have spent a lot of time with the tribes to make sure that we could reposition the program in a way that would actually meet their needs. For instance, we had very high fees to access the program. We had a lot of complications in the way in which it was structured. Those have largely been simplified. And then, as you suggested, the access to the federal financing bank was really the key, right? Before that was passed, a tribe would have to work through a local bank, many of whom wanted them to waive their sovereign rights, et cetera. And we could provide only a guarantee. Today, we have the ability to work with the tribes in the way in which they wish to be worked with. And it has resulted in many applications coming in. So we have over $1 billion of applications today that we are evaluating. We hope that the first one will be out the door here soon, but it requires a couple of additional due diligence points to be completed. But we're very excited about making sure that the tribes actually have that ability to realize all of the energy projects that they really want to participate in.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have just one question on the second round real quick, and Mr. Crane, it's to you. In order for the hydrogen hub in West Virginia, we'll use that because it's a big transitional area with a lot of fossil, and we're looking at how can we basically mitigate a lot of that to the point where we don't threaten the fossil that we need today by being able to produce the energy that we're going to need in the future. So with that, the administration needs to provide investment certainty to hydrogen producers. The producers of hydrogen have been working with Argonne National Labs, I think you know, for nearly a year to ensure the GREET model. I don't know if you've never heard of the GREET model, but the GREET model is greenhouse gases, regulated emissions, and energy use in technologies. That's the GREET model. So the Argonne National Labs have been doing that model and follows the science, not the politics, but the science for different types of feedstocks used to produce hydrogen, including coal mine methane, which is very harmful as far as emission and vetting. So any way we can get that out of the atmosphere is going to be great. However, I've been informed that the Department of Energy has delayed the release of the updated GREET model to certify clean hydrogen. So, Mr. Crane, I guess what we're asking, can you assure that they will stay with the science of the Argonne Lab for the GREET model, and it'll follow that science to not discriminate against different feedstocks based on the administration's maybe political preferences? And when do you think the Argonne National Laboratories will have the GREET model for the hydrogen credit going to be released?
Well, Senator, thank you for the question. Thank you actually for raising my own awareness about the importance of the GREET model, which, as you know, as you just alluded to, has historically been used for national lab purposes and now is part of informing tax policy in the United States. And the direct answer to your question is I will ensure you that the GREET model won't be modified to for any political purposes. It won't be prejudiced against for pathways, but coal bed methane, as you mentioned, also renewable natural gas is a very important part of that effort. And we, thanks to your question, we have an internal review process going on next week just to find out where the state of play is across the agency. So
great. I misled you. I have one more. This is to Mr. Shaw and Mr. Crane. Do you all agree that the grants and loans under your office are capped by the IRA and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law? Are they capped?
Yeah, I mean, the way that
you know what you have to work with, right? You're capped out at that.
Yeah, we have a specific amount of loan authority and a specific amount of credit subsidy.
Okay.
And on the financial assistance side, absolutely. And if we ever looked like we were committing more money than you had given us, OMB would be on us like a ton of.
Well, I know some of the testimony today sound like we're just throwing caution to the wind, just kind of throw the money out there.
No.
And also on inflation. Inflation, I will say, came down from 9% to 3% a year after the Inflation Reduction Act took effect. So I have my challenges with the administration. I think you all know it. But on the whole, we are producing more energy than ever. That's a fact. and we're producing more wind and solar, and we're investing. I says, we're producing the energy we need today, and we're investing in energy you want tomorrow. But we're not going to get rid of what you need today until we have ability to replace with basically dispatchable power that gives us 24/7. That's what we're working towards. And we have got to get permitting advanced, and we're working very diligently on that, and hopefully we'll have something to offer to the committee very shortly. Senator? Okay.
I do want to add to the conversation. I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, your comments and this idea that at the end of the day, for our renewable energy portfolio, it's very diverse. But one thing we keep forgetting, and I heard it right today, I think for the first time, other than my advocacy for it, is from the senator from Alaska, is geothermal, right? Along with the investment tax credits we did for solar, we also did really incentivize geothermal, which is a key energy producer for us that is clean. Undersecretary, can you talk a little bit about what DOE is doing with respect to promoting geothermal energy as well?
Well, the other side of the DOE is doing a lot on geothermal on the R&D side. Within the infrastructure undersecretariat, we don't have a specific bucket of money for geothermal the way we have for advanced nuclear or hydrogen, but we do have programs like the rural, what we call the ERA, the rural and remote, the $1 billion there, where we would welcome geothermal proposals so that we could help advance, because we share, and the Secretary very much shares, the idea that geothermal should be a building block of American energy security.
Thank you.
Senator Heinrich, do you have any? Senator Heinrich, you're okay? Let me just thank all of you. I know it's been a little long, and we enjoyed it, but I think it's been very informational, and I think you get a little flavor of how, first of all, we're all very, very committed to energy that our country needs and how we can lead the world, and I think we have a chance of doing that. We want to hold ourselves accountable, and Ms. Dawson, we think you will do that, and we want to make sure you have the resources to do that. We want to make sure that we're able to get the new technology that we need, and also be able to fulfill our commitment to the climate, that we all have a responsibility, but also provide the energy that the country needs. I think it's kind of an all win-win situation if we work together. So with that, members are going to have until the close of business tomorrow to submit additional questions for the record. And with that, I thank you. Meeting's adjourned.